The market existed in the hollowed ribcage of a dead megastructure, a place where light came in thin, sickly strips and never quite reached the floor. Stalls were welded together from mismatched alloys, bones of ships older than memory, and every surface smelled of oil, ozone, and fear. This was where things without names were sold. Creatures stood in lines marked by colored chains, tags dangling from their necks like prices at a butcher's counter. Languages collided in the air-sharp clicks. Wet hisses, electric hums, but the meaning was universal. Everything here had a value, and mercy was not one of the accepted currencies. Buyers moved slowly, inspecting their purchases the way predators examine prey. Strength was tested with shocks. Obedience was measured by how quickly a subject lowered their eyes. Families were separated with the efficiency of machinery, because separation fetched a higher profit. Children were quieter when removed early, before they learned how to scream in ways that haunted sellers later. The market masters told themselves this was order, not cruelty, civilization, not savagery. Numbers balanced, trade flowed. The galaxy turned. In one narrow aisle, where rust flaked from the ceiling and pooled like dried blood, a small alien girl stood clutching 3 corroded coins. They were barely recognizable as legal tender, scraped thin by time and desperation. She held them in both hands, as if squeezing them hard enough might make them multiply. Her eyes were too large for her face, reflective and dark, taking in the towering shapes around her. She had learned not to cry. Crying drew attention, and attention drew bids. Behind her, a human knelt inside an energy cage. He was bruised, one eye swollen shut, knuckles raw from a fight that had already been decided before it began. Humans were rare here, dangerous even when broken, and therefore expensive. His wrists were bound with suppression cuffs, humming softly to keep his muscles from responding the way they wanted to. Still, he sat upright. Still, he met the eyes of anyone who looked at him. That alone made the sellers uneasy. The girl stepped forward when the auctioneer finished listing the human S-traits like inventory: strength, endurance, aggression, high resale value. She raised her hands with the coins, her voice thin but steady as she asked if it was enough to buy a dad. The market laughed. Not cruel laughter, not kind either, just the sound of beings who had forgotten how questions like that were supposed to be answered. The auctioneer sneered and waved her away. 3 rusty coins couldn't buy a meal, let alone a human. Rules were rules. Prices were prices. But something shifted in the air. Subtle at first, like a pressure change before a storm. The human-esque good eye widened. Not with fear, but with something far more dangerous. Resolve. Around them, a few buyers hesitated. Somewhere deep in the market's ancient bones, alarms flickered as systems registered rising heart rates, clenched fists, and a concept no ledger could record. A transaction about to occur that would not involve money at all. Expand heading 2 in 500 words without subheadings and any suction. The laughter did not last long. It faded the way sound does in vacuum, abruptly and without ceremony. As the girl's question settled into the space between the stalls, 3 rusty coins lay in her open palms, their surfaces pitted and darkened by age, stamped with symbols no longer recognized by any current trade guild. To the market, they were worthless. To her, they were everything she had left in the universe. The auctioneer bent closer, mandibles clicking in irritation as its scanners swept the coins and confirmed what everyone already knew. No credit value, no exchange rights. Scrap at best. The creature opened its mouth to dismiss her again, but the human moved. It wasn't a lunge or a struggle. The suppression cuffs prevented that. Instead, he shifted his posture, straightening despite the pain, and the chains holding his cage rattled softly. The sound cut through the murmurs like a blade. He looked at the girl, really looked at her, and something ancient stirred behind his battered face. In a galaxy where survival often meant shedding attachments, humans were infamous for doing the opposite. They collected bonds the way other species collected weapons. The market had learned to fear human anger, but it had never learned to price human loyalty. "I'll take the deal," the human said, his voice hoarse but clear. The translator hesitated, then rendered the words in a dozen tongues. Confusion rippled outward. The auctioneer recoiled, spines flaring. Deals required authority. Ownership required payment. A slave could not consent to be bought by a child with obsolete metal. The girl turned, eyes wide, as if afraid the sound might vanish if she moved too fast. She took a step closer to the cage, the coins trembling in her hands. "Is it enough?" she asked again, softer this time, not to the auctioneer but to the human. The question was no longer about money. It was about choice. He nodded once, a simple motion, deliberate, final. "For me," he said. "It is." The market erupted in protest. Buyers shouted. Security drones powered up, their weapons unfolding like mechanical flowers. Contracts were cited, codes invoked, penalties calculated in real time. None of it mattered. The human reached out as far as the field would allow, fingers brushing the barrier inches from the girl's hands. The energy shimmered where skin nearly touched, and sensors spiked as if the system itself didn't know how to interpret what it was witnessing. Something changed then, not just in that aisle, but across the market's network. Humans were classified as assets, as threats, as tools of war. Now, every watching intelligence had to process a new variable, a human who had just redefined ownership as a one-sided promise. The girl closed her fingers around the coins and nodded, as if sealing a contract older than the stars. When the first suppression cuff failed, no one could say why. Maybe it was a flaw. Maybe it was neglect. Or maybe, in a place where everything had a price, the system simply couldn't comprehend a transaction paid for with 3 rusty coins and an unbreakable word. Expand heading 3 in 500 words without subheadings and any suction. They had cataloged him the moment he was captured. Species, human, origin, Sol system, threat classification, high, behavioral note, extremely resistant to submission conditioning, to the market and the syndicates that supplied it. He was not a man. He was inventory with a pulse, a dangerous animal that required extra restraints and a higher insurance fee. Buyers saw muscle density, bone reinforcement, adrenal response. They did not see the way he positioned himself between the girl and the drones without thinking. Even before his cuffs began to fail, humans were never meant to be owned. The galaxy knew this in theory, the way it knew about supernovas or black holes phenomena acknowledged, but kept at a safe distance. In practice, greed had a way of convincing intelligent beings that exceptions could be made. This human was supposed to be broken already. He had fought in places with no names left, survived battles that rewrote local physics, and buried more friends than any species should have to. He had been starved, shocked, and paraded through 3 systems as proof that even humans could be chained. What they never managed to strip from him was refusal. When the auctioneer's drones closed in, he did not beg or bargain. He planted his feet, as well as the energy field allowed, and lifted his chin. The movement was small, but it carried weight. Humans communicated defiance in posture long before words. The suppression cuffs screamed as his heart rate spiked. Struggling to dampen instincts older than spaceflight, pain tore through his arms. But pain was familiar. Pain was manageable. Letting the girl be taken again was not. The buyers hesitated, not because they were kind, but because something in his stance triggered a warning buried deep in their instincts. This was not prey. This was not property. This was a creature that fought back even when escape was impossible. The market's records were full of stories like this, filed under, anomalies, and quietly ignored. Humans who turned holding cells into graveyards, humans who smiled while bleeding, humans who adopted lost alien children mid-evacuation and dared anyone to object. The girl pressed herself against the cage, small hands gripping the bars, her voice lost in the rising chaos. The human lowered himself to her level, ignoring the way the field scorched his skin. He spoke softly, a tone he hadn't used in years, not since before the wars. He told her to stay behind him. He told her he would handle it. He told her she wasn't alone anymore. Security protocols escalated. Energy levels rose. A single command would have ended him, reduced the problem to ash and silence. No one gave it. Somewhere in the chain of authority, someone hesitated, calculating outcomes and probabilities. Humans were expensive to kill. Humans had allies. Humans had a habit of turning personal losses into crusades. When the first restraint finally shattered, the sound echoed through the market like a declaration. Not of war, but of something far more unsettling. The human stepped forward, free arm raised not to strike, but to shield. In that moment, the galaxy was reminded of a truth it preferred to forget. You can cage a human body. You can sell a human name. But you can never own a human who has decided to protect someone else. Expand heading 4 in 500 words without subheadings and any suction. The galaxy had many definitions for strength. Mass, measured in gravity, survived. Firepower, calculated in megatons and kill ratios. Longevity, counted in millennia of unbroken rule. By all those measures, humanity ranked somewhere in the middle. Dangerous. Yes, but hardly supreme. Yet there was another metric, one that never appeared in databases or threat assessments, because no one knew how to quantify it until it was too late. The market felt it before it understood it. As the human placed himself between the girl and the drones, a strange stillness spread through the aisles. Buyers stopped moving. Auctioneers stopped shouting. Even the security constructs adjusted their targeting algorithms. Uncertain. This was not aggression. This was not fear. It was devotion. Raw and uncompromising, radiating from a species that treated connection as a weapon and a shield at the same time. The girl clutched his torn sleeve, her small fingers trembling. She did not know the word for father in his language, but she understood its meaning instinctively. He had chosen her without obligation, without profit, in a place where choice had been stripped from everyone else. That choice sent ripples outward, disturbing centuries of cultural assumptions. In most civilizations, care was transactional, protection was earned, bonds were conditional. Humans shattered that logic by giving it freely. A senior buyer, ancient and vast, watched from a hovering dais, its mind racing. It had overseen wars that extinguished stars and economies built on suffering. Yet the sight before it unsettled something deep and old. It remembered humans from earlier conflicts, not for their fleets, but for the way they fought differently once something personal was at stake. How ceasefires failed, how treaties burned, how entire campaigns derailed because a human had decided that someone mattered more than strategy. The drones powered down one by one, not because they were ordered to, but because their predictive models no longer converged on a favorable outcome. The probability trees exploded into chaos. Every path forward led to disproportionate loss. This was the paradox of human love. It made them irrational, and therefore impossible to predict. Whispers spread across the market as channels. Traders spoke of curses and omens. Slavers remembered half-forgotten rules about never separating human young, about never letting humans form attachments in captivity. Those rules had been written in blood. This was how it started every time. The human knelt again, despite his injuries, bringing himself eye to eye with the girl. He rested his forehead gently against hers, a gesture so intimate that several species had to look away. In that moment, the market did not see a slave and a buyer. It saw a protector and a child. It saw a bond forming that would not break, no matter the cost, far beyond the megastructure. In systems that had never heard of 3 rusty coins, future histories quietly rearranged themselves. Fleets would be diverted. Laws would be rewritten. Entire species would update their first contact protocols, all because the strongest force in the stars had once again revealed itself not in rage, not in conquest, but in the terrifying, unstoppable power of human love. Expand heading 5 in 600 words without subheadings and any suction. Fear spread through the galaxy in strange ways, not as panic or hysteria, but as caution, written quietly into policy updates and unspoken rules. Long after the market was abandoned and its corridors sealed, traders and warlords alike would remember what they had witnessed there. They would remember that no weapon had been fired, no fleet deployed, and yet the balance of power had shifted. The lesson was simple and deeply unsettling. Human love was not a weakness. It was a catalyst. Stories circulated first as rumors. A single human had defied an entire slave market. A child had offered 3 worthless coins and walked away protected by the most dangerous species in known space. At first, these stories were dismissed as exaggerations, moral fables told by smugglers and fringe traders. But then patterns emerged. Systems that mistreated humans began experiencing disruptions. Contracts failed. Pirate operations collapsed under inexplicable resistance. Rescue missions appeared where none should have been possible, executed with precision and fury that bordered on the supernatural. Alien strategists reviewed battle footage from unrelated conflicts and found the same anomaly repeating. Humans fought competently under normal conditions, but when a human believed someone depended on them, when they identified a person as theirs, to protect, the rules changed. Pain tolerance increased beyond predicted limits. Tactical creativity spiked. Retreat became unthinkable. Losses that would break other species only sharpened human resolve. Love, it seemed, unlocked something buried deep in their biology and culture, something no amount of training or indoctrination could replicate. Entire civilizations revised their threat models. Humans were no longer categorized solely as soldiers or survivors. They were guardians. That label carried a different kind of danger. You could negotiate with conquerors. You could bribe mercenaries. You could even deter predators. Guardians was something else entirely. They did not stop when the cost became too high. They stopped only when the thing they loved was safe or when they were dead. The most disturbing realization was that human love did not require blood relation. The child from the market was not human. She shared none of his genetics, history, or culture. It did not matter. Humans adopted people, causes, and ideals with equal ferocity. Once claimed, that bond was absolute. The galaxy had evolved on conditional loyalty. Humans operated on unconditional attachment, and that made them unpredictable in the worst possible way. Diplomatic academies added new case studies. Never threaten a human as family. Never use children as leverage. Never assume isolation weakens them. In fact, isolation often had the opposite effect. A lone human with nothing left to lose and someone to protect was rated as a potential extinction-level event in several simulations. Those findings were quietly classified. As for the girl, her life became a footnote in broader history, but her existence echoed far beyond herself. She grew up in safe places, surrounded by beings who treated her as untouchable not because of her species, but because of who had claimed her. The human taught her words like kindness and stubbornness, laughter and courage. Other species watch from a distance, uneasy, learning through observation what no treaty could explain. In the end, the galaxy did not fear humans because they were violent. Many species were violent. It did not fear them because they were strong. Strength could be matched. It feared them because human love scaled infinitely. It turned individuals into armies and small promises into unbreakable laws. In a universe governed by power and profit, humanity had introduced something far more dangerous: devotion that could not be bought, broken, or bargained with.